insurrection, a threat to democracy.
This city is under siege.
Your country's in revolt.
Alarming situation there in Ottawa.
The police chief is calling it a nationwide insurrection driven by madness.
If you support the truckers in Ottawa, I'm going to assume that you are a fucking Nazi.
Canadians know where I stand.
There hasn't been as much violence as some had perhaps projected, but that does not necessarily mean that it has been peaceful.
Reports of severe vandalism and criminal behavior.
Streets are clogged. The honking is incessant.
Some protesters harassed a soup kitchen.
These anti-vaxxers actually took food from the mouths of the homeless.
Ironically enough, similar to Dr. Panesi losing her job over a violation of what she held to be her ethics, I'm about to lose mine, and my primary responsibility for the last 8 years was supporting protection of our Prime Minister. The irony is not lost on me, and probably not lost on him either. And as a Mountie, I always felt it was very important that I know what my legal authorities are, and that police officers should know exactly what authority they have to do what they do. And I would like to just read the paragraph 3 of the Emergencies Act to you. Whereas the Governor and Council, in taking such special temporary measures, would be subject to the Canadian Charter of Rights and Freedoms and the Canadian Bill of Rights, particularly with respect to those fundamental rights, not to be limited or abridged.
You don't want to end up losing your license, end up with a criminal record, which will impact your job, your livelihood, even your ability to travel internationally, including to the US.
Our mobility rights, where every citizen has the right to enter, remain in, and leave Canada, even in a national emergency. Everyone has the right not to be arbitrarily detained or imprisoned. So when I read about the secure isolation facility in North Battleford, Saskatchewan, that was very concerning to me. Detailed about how it is meant for people who willfully do not abide by their quarantine. Every individual is equal before and under the law. Excuse me. And has the right to equal protection and equal benefit of the law without discrimination. The Constitution is the supreme law of Canada. So I'd like to read my oath of office that I took 15 years ago. I, Daniel Beaufort, solemnly swear that I will faithfully, diligently, and impartially execute and perform the duties required of me as a member of the Royal Canadian Mounted Police, and will well and truly obey and perform all lawful orders and instructions that I receive as such, without fear, favor, or affection of or toward any person, so help me God.
You can't end a pandemic with blockades. You need to end it with science. You need to end it with public health measures.
It is certainly not the case that the official narrative has demonstrably justified a gigantic overreach into the fundamental freedoms of every citizen of this country. The RCMP's purpose, from coast to coast to coast, at the community, provincial and territorial and federal levels, we work to prevent crime, enforce the law. We know that the supreme law of this country is the Constitution. We investigate offenses. I can't help but wonder, perhaps offenses of intimidation to our physicians and our scientists, and knowingly withholding life-saving treatment from thousands of Canadians and millions of people globally. We are to keep Canadians and their interests safe and secure. All Canadians, not just a select few. So in the context of the pandemic, I've seen us intimidate and arrest Canadians as opposed to assisting them.
Well, a new false cure for COVID.
It doesn't make sense to risk your life to take unproven medication.
Other stains on Canada, and the RCMP in particular, things that we have been a part of, carrying out so-called lawful orders. Orders to remove children from their homes to satisfy a government conformity initiative. or the registration and internment of Japanese Canadians during World War II. We're not immune to the stains of history. And I fear we may be repeating past mistakes.
We don't have freedom. We have an ultimatum. It's you either do this or lose your job.
I want to be clear. The Government of Canada recognizes and respects police independence of the RCMP in exercise of police powers in criminal investigations. Paragraph 10. At their best, the RCMP embodies what Canada and Canadians aspire to be. Upstanding, loyal, and committed to the pursuit of justice. How can we pursue justice without fully understanding both sides of this argument, with a complete censorship and suppression of one side of this argument?
Residents that I have spoken to who say they feel terrorized, intimidated. Residents say they feel like hostages. Residents in that area say that they are being held hostage.
You now need to understand that you are breaking laws.
We must not confuse dissent with disloyalty. We must remember always that accusation is not proof and that conviction depends upon evidence and due process of law. We will not walk in fear one of another. We will not be driven by fear into an age of unreason. If we dig deep in our history and doctrine and remember that we are not descended from fearful people, not from people who fear to write, speak, associate, and defend causes that were for the moment unpopular. I feel that we have detracted so far from the values that form the core identity of what it means to be a Canadian. We are divided, with both sides angry and fearful of each other, and how much worse this will get. Our language has been used to divide Canada into an us versus them mindset, the responsible versus the irresponsible, the anti-vaxxers versus the sheep. We cannot continue to allow this decline toward a further divided, increasingly authoritarian state. We need to communicate honestly and courageously to make our perspective heard so that others may be given the opportunity to understand. It is time to be strong in mind and body and in character. It's difficult to have discussions with people who disagree on such a contentious issue, but that's a good place to start. Courage takes practice. It will be hard and awkward and very uncomfortable at times. However, if we continue to allow this unchecked by our silence and compliance, then the failure to effect change is on our shoulders.